origin of the precious one from Amla's heart, full of love. From a rickety gate, 1960, she grew up to bright flower. It was then a small nursery. As the year went by, she opened up. Now at 50 years, 50,000 children later, she's still young and strong. She's our home where we grow big. She's our life. She's TCV. She's our home.
These days, a Tibetan refugee school in India has become a regular meeting ground for Nobel laureates. In April 2006, Betty Williams of Northern Ireland, a Nobel laureate, participated in a Peace Jam event at the Tibetan Children's Village in Dharamsala. The organizers of the Peace Jam, based in Colorado, say the mission of the Peace Jam Foundation is to create young leaders committed to positive change in themselves, their communities, and the world through the inspiration of Nobel Peace Laureates who pass on the spirit, skills, and wisdom they embody. In October 2009, 3 Nobel laureates, Marriott Corrigan McGuire of Northern Ireland, Jody Williams of the US, and Shirin Ebadi of Iran, gathered at the Tibetan Children's Village to participate in an event called Thank You Tibet, organized by Peace Jam.
We thank His Holiness the Dalai Lama. We thank the Tibetan people. We know your pain of living in exile for 50 years. But have hope, because in you, as the future peace leaders of Tibet, the youth, together with Chinese youth, you can change the world.
The student, you are beautiful and wonderful examples of how students can come together and preserve past and yet be firmly placed in today's world.
Your Holiness, you left Tibet 50 years ago to come here and to make the future of Tibet, and you have done so, and these children represent the future of Tibet.
How a Tibetan refugee school has become a regular meeting ground for Nobel laureates and why they wish to thank Tibet is a story of a miracle. And the miracle of the Tibetan Children's Village grew out of the convulsions of a great tragedy. In the aftermath of the 1959 People's Uprising against Chinese communist rule in Tibet and the inevitable brutal crackdown by the Chinese authorities, Tibetan refugees streamed to India, Nepal, and Bhutan throughout 1959 and 1960s. Altogether, about 87,000 Tibetan refugees managed to escape Tibet and follow His Holiness the Dalai Lama into exile. Many died in the attempt. Those lucky ones who managed to survive the trek over the mighty Himalayas were able to bring their children with them. Many lost their parents on the way. Like the grown-ups, these children needed to be fed, sheltered, and most importantly, given a decent education. His Holiness called these children the seeds of future Tibet. When properly nurtured, they would be the source of the cultural and spiritual rejuvenation of Tibet.
Where we grow big, she's our life, she's TCV.
One day in 1960, His Holiness planted one such seed of a Bodhi tree in Dharamsala to be nurtured with love and sustained by hope. That day, he entrusted 51 children to the care of Mrs. Thiringdolma, his elder sister. The government of India provided Egerton Hall, an old British bungalow, to accommodate this batch of Tibetan refugee children. Mrs. Thiringdolma, against all odds, directed the nursery for Tibetan refugee children with inspired determination. Along with her team of co-workers, Mrs. Thiringdolma worked passionately for the welfare and the education of children under her care. Unfortunately, she died in 1964. His Holiness then directed his younger sister, Mrs. Jetsun Pema, to take up the responsibility. Mrs. Jetsun Pema, the force behind the extraordinary expansion of TCV, explains those trying initial years.
As most people know, the TCV was initiated by His Holiness, and in the early 60s, when the first refugees came into exile, the most difficulties that people faced was, in the road construction camps. So most of the jobs that were available for the Tibetans was road construction in the Himalayan regions of Ladakh and Kulu Manali. In the early years, as I said, there was never enough food and clothing. And then there were times when the children didn't have enough clothing, didn't have enough food. There was no, medical facilities. And those were really difficult years. And even when I took over, there were times when children from Nepal would come, 200 children at a time, and most of them suffering from, diarrhea. And there would be times when in a day we would lose 2 or 3 children. And those were really difficult times. And when I look back and think of those difficult times and now compare it to what it is today, thanks to the help that we have received and the support from all different people, things have really improved. So I think sometimes it's very important to compare from where we came and where we are today, and to have the courage to go forward, and also to always be grateful to all those who helped us. Not being educated, in running a school and things like that, it was difficult for me, but I thought it was always important to seek the advice of people who had the experience in looking after children. So I read books and I consulted people, and the TCV, sort of grew along with the staff and grew up with the children. The most challenging part of the work was, I think, learning, together with the children, learning from the experience of the children and seeing what was their need and trying to provide that need. And then what was most helpful was to start the sponsorship for the children. And then we started the sponsorships, and along with the sponsorships, we started to have, homes for a group of children, 20 children, 25 children, homes. We started to build the homes, and then over the years things improved. When His Holiness always refers to the Tibetan children as the future seeds for Tibet, and so we were entrusted with these future seeds, the children, and we felt that we had to do our very best to give the best education possible, an education
which was deep-rooted in our own culture, our religion, so that the Tibetan children would not lose their identity as Tibetans, and at the same time also to give the children a modern education, because being in India, we had to cope with everything which was quite different from Tibet, and it was very necessary for our children to go shoulder to shoulder with the rest of the world. And so the education was an education which was very holistic. We had the best of our Tibetan culture and our education, at the same time a good modern education. And combining these two together, we tried to see how best we could, bring up these children. And His Holiness always said the most important thing is to have, the children growing up to be good human beings. And I think towards that, aim we have always strived. And then I think that has brought good results.
Mrs. Jetsun Pema dedicated herself to giving a home to destitute children. She and her committed administrative staff and teaching faculty also gave a sound education to thousands of children. She has transformed a humble nursery into one of the premier Tibetan exile educational institutions. For this, she is fondly called Amala, the Honorable Mother, whose selfless work in the service of Tibetan children for so many years has infused students, teachers, and staff with the same spirit of hard work and service. Her selfless service forms one of the core values of the character of TCV. The other core value of TCV is one of selfless love. In fact, the motto of the TCV school system is others before self. And this love is best manifested and practiced at the numerous homes. The main TCV school and its many branches around India are organized into homes with 30 to 40 children to each home. These homes are looked after and cared for by foster parents who supervise the cooking, the arrangement for meals, cleanliness, and the discipline of each home. By their dedication and love, these foster parents provide their wards a home away from home.
Where we grow big, she is our land, she is TCV.
Another feature of the TCV school system is the bond established between younger and older students. In each home, a younger boy is entrusted to the care of an older boy and a younger girl to an older girl, to be looked after, helped in studies, and to serve as a real brother or sister to the younger one. This bond, established in school, in most cases carry well forward into their college and adult lives. Today, the seed planted by His Holiness and nurtured and watered by Mrs. Tsiringdolma and Mrs. Jetsun Pema and their dedicated staff has grown into an enormous Bodhi tree with deep roots and many branches laden with fruit. Today, the Tibetan Children's Village school system is a sprawling organization with branch schools spread all over India. It consists of residential and day schools, vocational training centers, youth hostels for those doing university studies, daycare centers, and a mother's training center. The total student strength of the entire TCV system consists of a staggering 17,029, which includes 479 old people who are looked after by the TCV. These days, the TCV is well underway in establishing a university for young Tibetans in Bangalore in South India. This expansion was fueled by the relaxed political atmosphere that came over Tibet in the early 1980s when China allowed delegations of His Holiness to visit his people in Tibet. Restrictions on Tibetans traveling outside of Tibet were lifted. Tibetans from Tibet flocked to India to be blessed by His Holiness on pilgrimage for spiritual education and, above all, for the Tibetans of school-going age to receive a modern education. Today, about 60% of the TCV's entire student population consists of Tibetans recently arrived from Tibet. Considering the difficulties they have been through, these students are highly motivated and make the best of the opportunities given to them. And indeed, one of the extraordinary accomplishments of the Tibetan exiles is in the field of education. And the Tibetan Children's Village School system has played a decisive role in this accomplishment. Mr. Tsawang Yishi, the president of the TCV school system, explains the significance of this extraordinary expansion of the TCV and the accomplishments of its past graduates and his hopes for the future ones.
Thanks to the far-sighted vision and guidance of His Holiness right from the beginning when we arrived into exile, that the children, concern for children and their education received firm priority. So today, after 50 years, TCV has come a long way from its humble beginning, from our nursery to our, it's the single largest educational setup in our exile community today. As far as the expansion and development of a TCV is concerned, and today we have branches extending from Ladakh in the north to Balakopi in the south, and in 18 different schools and many elite projects. Today our data shows over 37,000 children have gone through the TCV system. From mid-60 onwards, all these residential schools that were aided by Government of India got filled up, and there were no more avenues where the children could be sent. At the same time, children kept pouring to the nursery from all quarters of the refugee community. And this is how, again, out of sheer need, TCV had to make long-term plans, and that is when I think Madam Pema, who was the then director, made decision to build our own schools, and this is how the educational development started. And since then, there was no looking back. Our records show out of the 37,000, of course, a lot were sent out when they were young at early stages. It was only from 1978 onwards that we had our first graduates. Since then, I think now it's the number of graduates that actually set for the senior secondary level, that is nearing over 10,000. And roughly 70% of this would have gone on to +2 education, and this would be around 7,000. And then again, another 60 to 70% of them would have gone on to higher education, college education, higher training, and this would be a little over 4,500. So this means today we have our graduates in all walks of life scattered all over the world who we are very proud and happy to say that they are gradually making their mark and keeping up the spirit of Tibet and doing their bit, including supporting their alma mater. That wholehearted devotion from the staff members, but also people who came to support us either financially or in person as volunteers, they were all taken by the children and the need for that support and the need to care for them for the future of Tibet. So there was this wholehearted support, total involvement from all quarter. So this is how I think, in a way, TCV always felt that we had a parental responsibility for the destiny of the children, and also the responsibility that we owe to the goodwill and trust of so many friends all around the world. And this we regarded very precious, and we needed it, and we need it for the future of Tibet. So we had a tremendous regard for this. This is where I think we had to do our very best, all out, hard work effort. So this is basically exemplified by Madam Pema and her eldest sister right from the beginning. And then, of course, when His Holiness has placed so much trust in us, then how could we fail him? And this is where we had to do our best so that the trust, the help that sustained us all these years. So we have to continue on these principles and practical policies, yes. We have a long way to go. We are still in exile. We are not yet back home in Tibet. And His Holiness has always counseled and emphasized on the importance of proper upbringing of our children and education right from the beginning. And of late, he has counseled us very strongly. In keeping with this, the future direction of our focus will be, apart from bringing improvements on the existing level, our direction would be in the line of higher study, for higher education, and this also specifically in the field of more specialized study, both in our traditional studies as well as modern subjects. Right from the beginning, whenever there was opportunity, we always had projects, even if it was a small one, as small as our handicraft center, to work towards self-sufficiency, and we have continued this throughout. And today, nothing less than 15% of our total income is internally generated. And of late, we are very proud to let you know, as I told you a little earlier, our alma mater has matured, and they are coming in a big way to support our work as well. And this, I think, in the long run, can become one of our mainstays as far as resource mobilization is concerned. Whatever we have established to date, I think it's not only due to the kindness and blessing of His Holiness, his two sisters, late Mrs. Siringdrama Takla and Madam Pema, their sacrifice, but also I'd like to thank the unwavering support and understanding of the government of India and their people, and then of course the many friends and donors that we have around the world who have helped to sustain us, particularly the SOS Kinderdorf International. We must owe our gratitude and remembrance to the many mothers, teachers, co-workers, both past and present, who have dedicated their life simply for the sake of working for the children, for the future of Tibet.
In 1978, TCV saw its first batch of students graduate to colleges in India and to the wider world. Since then, the TCV graduates have fanned out within the community and the world outside to become doctors, nurses, teachers, civil servants with the Central Tibetan Administration, writers, journalists, social workers, and determined activists. Several, at a young age, have been plucked from TCV to be recognized as reincarnations of important lamas. These young incarnate lamas, by their application and their exemplary behavior, help to promote Tibet's cultural heritage and sustain the continuity of its spiritual lineage. All TCV graduates contribute mightily to the cohesion and productivity of the Tibetan community in exile. One such TCV product is Siringdolkar. She graduated from TCV in 1992 and pursued her further studies at Punjab University in Chandigarh in northwest India. While in Chandigarh, she was deeply moved by the plight of the Tibetan refugees, unable to speak either Hindi or English, totally disoriented in a big city, but desperate for immediate medical help for their various ailments. In 1996, Siring stepped in to help them. Since then, for all the Tibetan refugees who come to Chandigarh for medical treatment, She is their voluntary nurse, interpreter, and someone who can get her patients the immediate attention of the right doctor. Tibetans recognize her as their own Mother Teresa and refer to her as Teresa Dolkar or Terry Dolkar.
Since I studied from TCV school from my basic classes, so the school's motto being the others before self, so which inspired me the most. So after doing my graduation here in Chandigarh, even though I thought of becoming a maths teacher outside, but then I thought staying here in Chandigarh, I can serve my community in a better way, because this is what the other before self teach me the most. But then TCV itself means a lot because it is helping number of students in general and especially for the newcomers. So I think having a TCV school as a such is a great mean for us.
Another is Dawa Pinky, the administrator of the Dharamsala-based Delek Hospital and a long-time member of the Tibetan Parliament in exile. Dawa Pinky's eloquence on the floor of the Tibetan Parliament is more than matched by his dedication and hard work at Delek Hospital, values he had picked up at TCV.
I got admission to TCV school as an orphan. TCV has taught me to work in a Tibetan community with sincerity and dedication. TCV is not just a school for me, it's also home for me. And when I was in school, one of my school principals used to tell me, TCV is an integrated family. And that is, I feel it's very worth remembering about TCV. The reason why I'm here in the Tibetan community to serve is that whatever I'm today, it's all because of TCV. And now, when you grow up and you are in a society, I think it's my responsibility or our responsibility to repay back to the society. And that's why I'm here.
She's our home, where we grow big. She's our land. She's TCV. She's our home.
This mighty educational enterprise would not be made possible without the consistent generosity of others. Besides the Austria-based SOS Kinderdorf International, the TCV also receives financial support from many aid agencies, organizations and individuals, including former students of TCV. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is fond of telling the Tibetan people, hope for the best and prepare for the worst. Institutions like the TCV is a firm guarantee that Tibetan exiles have kept their faith but are fully prepared for the worst. In the years ahead, coming generations of Tibetans will point to exile institutions like TCV to say that these organizations ensured Tibet's cultural survival and spiritual rejuvenation outside of the Tibetans' homeland. We hope that this Bodhi tree will continue to provide shelter and protection to many eager minds to discover the wonders and riches of our one common world.
Under her wings of compassion, she's our home, where we grow big. She's our land. She's TCV. She's our home, where we grow big. She's our land. She's TCV. vision of the precious one from Amla's heart, full of love. From Eric began 1960, she grew up to bright flower. It was then a small nursery. As the year went by, she opened up. Now at 50 and 50,000 children later, she's still young and strong. She's our home where we grow big. She's our life. She's TCV. She's our home where we grow big. She's our life. She's TCV. She's a photo forever pregnant. She gives birth to flowers, dotting our uncertain exile skin. She's a home for the lost soul. Tears of offense she wipes, fears of skateboards she soothes. Fear of growing you, she nurtures. Love she gives to all eco major. Tears of offense she wipes. Fear of skateboys she soothes. Fear of growing you, she nurtures. Love she gives to all eco major. She's our home where we grow big. She's our life. She's TCV. She's our home where we grow big. She's our life. She's TCV. In exile, her children take root. Some remember Buddha's fall. Some in the faraway foreign jungle. Her branches ring everywhere. From our ancient folklore to the spirit of wild world. She was a sailing on tomorrow under her wings of compassion. She's our home where where we grow big. She is our land.